the different postures, the asanas that we were talking about, these all are very integral to yoga. Can you just help us understand how do specific mudras and postures influence the brain activity and our overall neurological health?
I think let me start by saying that there is much more research needed. I think the problem with research is that its studies are only being funded when there's something in it for the person funding it or for the company funding it.
Mhm.
So studies on meditation, on asana, on mudra are few and far between. And sometimes maybe what I'll be talking about is anecdotal evidence. So that, with that caveat in mind, every single thing that we do has an impact on the brain. So we need to pay attention all the time. There is a term called neuroplasticity, which essentially means, I mean, that's always been going on in the brain, but we just didn't know about it until about, I don't know, 2 decades ago. But neuroplasticity essentially means that we have the ability to change the structure of the brain, the architecture of the brain, what happens in the brain, which we didn't think we were able to until, like I said, a few decades ago. So that happens. It can be happening subconsciously and happens all the time. So you could be zapping through Netflix and that has an effect on the brain. Maybe not the best. You could be concentrating and that has an effect on the brain. So if you pay attention to life, to everything in life, then you are more in control of what goes on in your brain. And surely that is what we want. Now, particular asanas and mudras, so take Gyan Mudra, for example, pressing the thumb and forefingertip together, stretching the remaining fingers away from you. That is mudra for concentration. I should say that mudras are often associated with hand gestures, but actually some mudras are asanas as well. So you have Viparit Karni, actually, that is a mudra too. And I sometimes describe, and I think I must have read that somewhere. So it's maybe not that I've come up with this. So, but mudras and postures are, because of what we know from neuroscience as well, states of mind expressed through the body, because the body is the mind. So they're an integral part of yoga because everything that we do is for the mind. And at the end of the day, if you stand in Virabhadrasana and you're raising the arms up high, that will raise your testosterone levels, your center of gravity. You could also call that your Kundalini chakra. You could call it your chi point if you're talking about Chinese medicine, Chinese philosophy, will rise. That will immediately make you happier, raising the arms like that. If you're on your back and you're raising the legs as well in, Viparit Karni or Sarvangasana, that is also, it may raise your GABA levels, levels of positive neurotransmitter called gamma aminobutyric acid, which changes the way that you're, so it slows down the firing of neurons, which then leads to you being less anxious. So all of these things are going on. But like I said, we need much, much more research. If you want me to talk with authority of that connection between neuroscience and mudras and postures. But I hope that has given you a little bit of sort of an idea of how important asanas and mudras and concentration and breathing are.
Yes, 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 totally, totally. And let's now get into a very lighter mode of conversation. We have been talking about a lot of neuroscience, yoga, mudras, its origin and its history. Let's understand, said about the anecdotal references coming in. So, can you share some of your real-time experiences with your clients or with yourself, how yoga has benefited in terms of managing stress and anxiety better?
Let me start with myself. I think that's always the most powerful because I've gone through that experience. So without giving too much detail, and a few years ago, I had all sorts of hormonal problems, having been sparked by taking the pill, which I never wanted, and then an implant and this and that. And when I got rid of all of that, it was still not immediately back to normal. And in that time, I had phases of going from tiredness to anger, frustration, depression. And there was one particular day I remember when my husband, was here. My sister was here as well. She was visiting. And I just couldn't get out of bed and I couldn't stop crying. And both of them were worried, of course. And that's, you want to help, right? So what we did was a beautiful sunshiny day. And somehow they got me out of bed and we went to the park. And I went into Sarvangasana and stayed in Sarvangasana for 30 minutes. And I kid you not, that it was the afternoon, it was late afternoon when I started Sarvangasana, and I had cried the whole day. Yes, I was outside, that's great. I was seeing green, that's also great. And yes, I was seeing the sunshine, that's also great. But I was in Sarvangasana for that time. And I came out of Sarvangasana and I had a big smile on my face. And I was, for that day, fine. cured and happy. So that is powerful to me. That's just something that happened to me personally, and I can highly recommend it. Also, from my students, I actually got a lovely card. Hold on, let me. So it was my birthday the other day, and I got a wonderful card from a student. I won't name names so that it's hopefully okay if I read a little bit from that. It's a very long card here. You can have a look. Sorry, listeners, you can't see. I thank my lucky stars whenever I think of yoga as a topic, or you, to have met you because you reinstated my love and passion for self-betterment and my drive to hone in my control of my senses, to make me feel like everything is possible by being ever so present, support. But this is essentially what people get out of it, being present. Being present makes you happy. Being in the present moment essentially means you're letting go of all the worries that are in the future and they're not real, right? We're making up a cinema in our mind of all the potential things that could happen. And then there's the, oh, I wish this had happened. I wish that had happened. Let go of it. It's happened. So being in the present moment immediately makes you happier. I've also been shared from, and that is my meditation classes, as well as I teach sound baths. And someone who came to my meditation or comes regularly to my meditation classes and sound bath classes said to me that after years of being on antidepressants, she could finally stop them completely. So phase them out, obviously, but stop them completely. And it is the only thing that has ever worked for her. And that I thought was just incredible. Very often you don't know because people don't share these stories because they're obviously quite personal. I do get lots of them. I do get lots of tears in my classes, which I think is cleansing and releasing and very good. I mean, I always say if you do yoga, whichever form, for years and you never get to a point of challenge, then you're doing something wrong. Then you're not practicing yoga. And then there's Brahmari Pranayam. I'm a massive fan of that, and I share that with all of my, well, probably all of my students, but especially the pregnant ones, because it's such a wonderful way to spark not just parasympathetic activity, but all of the painkillers, your natural opioids that you can create yourself. And that is a wonderful thing in labor when you're going through contractions and you want to keep your exhaustion to a minimum. And yeah, I've had fantastic feedback on that, that it's really, really helped people and made them feel empowered throughout labor. Yeah, so that would be some stories. And just the general, I mean, people coming out of, sometimes it's not what they say, sometimes they don't find the words, but they come out of meditation sessions and are just like, you can see it in their faces and the radiance of their faces. And so there is something really, really powerful about meditation. And I have to say about meditation in a group. I know everyone meditates differently and there is no one size fits all. But for many of my students, but obviously I see them in groups most of the time, the group meditations are very, very effective.
Totally. With the group meditation happening, you are vibing with the aura of people around you
Yeah.
as well, which is adding to your energy. And, I totally echo with your thought that you just mentioned in your response right now, that we often create a lot of problems just by thinking. And there's very, if I remember it correctly, a shloka by Krishna in Mahabharata or Gita as well, like Karmani Vadikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana. So the crux is just do your deed, don't think about the result.
Yeah.
And but we all humans are so, ingrained to think about the end outcome that
Mm.
we often forget to do the deed.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was in a conversation with, another friend, fellow BNI member for that matter. And we were continuously discussing about an idea he wanted to work on. And he was like, okay, what will happen if that happens? What will happen if that
Mm.
happens?
Mm.
I'm like, you need to try. You need to get out there. You need to start executing it. And he said me, you know what, Pulkit? This is what my wife even tells me, that you need to start executing things rather than just sitting and thinking about it.
Yeah, just do it. It's like the Nike slogan. Don't think about it, just do it. But yes, that is the thing about the Gita as well. And what I said earlier, I think, right? The thing that we find hard is the karma yoga. We don't struggle with asana practice, or we could, but if you want to get into a handstand and you don't manage, what's the big deal, right? But karma yoga, doing things without thinking about the outcome or not expecting anything. That is, I've said that before actually in a talk. That is my biggest challenge. I could go, and it is ridiculous, but I'll be expecting this drink to taste wonderful and be very bubbly, and then it's not bubbly enough, and I'm disappointed. Why does that matter? Why does it matter to me? Like, let go of that. It really doesn't matter. The food is disappointing, and I'm a massive foodie, so it gets to me all the time, and then I have to check myself and say, stop it. And this is the hardest in our world, because we're basically made to expect all of these things and to want also more from ourselves. But if you're constantly thinking about what the outcome is, you're not focusing on what you're actually doing, like you were saying.
Yeah, totally, totally. And it happens quite a lot. Even I'm myself, again, a very big foodie out there. So it happens a lot when we're eating the food as well. I am myself guilty of not eating with full concentration. But yeah, a similar incident happened yesterday. I ordered a drink at a cafe, and I was somewhere the other in my mind expecting it to have a dense texture, like a smoothie and everything. It was a Vietnamese frappe. And it was not that dense in its texture, till the point I was just contemplating why it doesn't have that dense texture. I was not able to enjoy that drink,
Yeah.
the strongness of coffee that Vietnamese frappe had. But the moment I thought, okay, now you have ordered the drink, you cannot change it, you have already sipped half of it,
Yeah.
let me drink. The very sip, I started relishing it. I could, feel those taste buds going with every sip in, and the taste that was just getting in me.
Yeah.
So it really does happen that we just create a lot of problems which are not even there.
Yeah. We are our own worst enemy. And it's all the mind, right? And everything that's happened before, everything that's happened to our forefathers, which has made us the way we are, with the way where we're starting off. But then also all the experiences that we have, everything shapes us. And we have, and that's also karma. We can into the future change our karma. It's not set in stone. But what has happened before, we have to deal with. The idea is that we're dealing with it in a way that is beneficial to us. So with that comes the responsibility for being aware, constant awareness. So awareness of the body, for example, is for that as well. What sensations do you realize in your body? What does that tell you about what may be coming up? What emotion may be coming up? In fact, emotions are made. I'm reading a great book on it at the moment, but it makes sense as well, right? You're reacting to what's going on in the body.
Yeah.
And that is what we need to pay attention to. So when we master that, we can keep ourselves from all the frustration and the disappointment and all the things that don't do us any good. I don't want to be frustrated about the food that I'm having. It happens, but I don't want it. So that is my practice. That is my challenge in yoga, practicing that. The meditation, there's some feel very good, but it's not about that either. It's just about, do you show up? And that's also another thing, right? It's about giving yourself, no matter what sort of yoga you practice. And when I go into offices as well, I can talk about how people feel afterwards, and that's great. But it's more about giving people the opportunity. So just like you would talk about sleep opportunity, like going to bed at 11 so that you're, asleep by 11:20, 11:30, or if you're unlucky by 12, but still before midnight. And it's the same with relaxation opportunity, I would call it. Show up, even if it's just for half an hour or for 5 minutes for that matter. You can do a lot in just a couple of minutes of just breathing with awareness, because we're not aware of how much our breath and the shallow breaths that we take spark our sympathetic activity, spark our stress response. And suddenly we're stressed because we weren't aware. But when we just breathe in a way that calms us, then a minute is enough. It's a great reset.
Basanti, before we wrap up, I would briefly like to touch upon, because you have been working a lot with corporates out there in the UK market. For me, when I'm pitching to corporates in India out here, one thing that has been a common outcome of the conversation has been it's more talk rather than execution action being taken. And it's a highly subjective space to be in, where if even the corporates wants to take an action, the employees don't come forward, they don't participate, or vice versa is also true, and it's highly subjective out here in the Indian subcontinent. What has been your experience in the European market out there with corporate wellness and organizations taking initiatives for employee wellness?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, it's completely right. It is very difficult. I think it's very, very complex as well. Number one, so what we offer is, or what the corporations offer is basically a benefit in kind to their staff. So we get paid not by the individuals, but by the company. And
Right.
once something is a benefit in kind, it makes you think, well, it's not my money. I may show up, I may not. So there's not that thing where you've paid whatever it is, £10, £20, or whatever, to show up, and you lose those £10 if you don't show up. That's not the case. So that is one reason why it may be difficult. It is also the workload. There's this wonderful saying that is attributed to many people, so I won't say who said it first, but you should meditate for 20 minutes a day, but not if you're too busy. If you're too busy, you should meditate for an hour a day. And it is completely true. And I can say that for myself. I have not meditated less in the last 5 months than I have in all my life. I've just not had the time, and I should know better, right? So we're human. We prioritize the wrong things, and we shouldn't, because if we just took that break, even if it's just a 10, 20-minute break, we would be so much more concentrated afterwards and work so much more productively. Then because of, or ever since COVID, things have moved to online a lot. Online is also less immediate, I guess, and it's easier for people to just ignore that online meeting. In some companies, it works really, really well. I have a company that's based in San Francisco, and they show up every time. I've got a really great turnout. Sometimes I've got companies where only 3 people show, but they still keep it up because they want that as that benefit. And those 3 people show up every week. Then I've got one company that I see in 2 different offices of theirs, and I just absolutely love them. So that's in-person sessions, and they really are the way forward. And I think that employer in particular is wonderful. The CEO really buys into it. They don't do it before work, during lunchtime, or after work, but actually during working hours, so that the employee knows you are supposed to go there. This is your working time, and I am asking you to go there because I believe that this is important, because it raises productivity. It is great for making you a team player, because you become more empathetic through meditation as well. And it's better for focus, for everything that you would want as an employer. So if someone just sees the benefit of that and really makes sure, drives home that point to their employees by showing up themselves, for example, and not just saying, oh, you should go, but I'm too busy, I'm in this meeting. That is the way to do it. So get buy-in from the CEO or from someone high up enough so that it makes everyone else think, everyone lower in the hierarchy, think, well, if they go, then I can go as well. That's important. And making people realize what it is you're doing. If it is meditation, talk about why meditation is so important, how it changes the architecture of the brain, how it makes you more resilient, more productive, calmer as a person, not just, oh, I feel good now in the moment, but no, over time, this has an effect on the brain. If it's yoga that you do, focus on how you can alleviate musculoskeletal disorders, how you can really stretch into your muscles, your fascia, get rid of all that tension in the body that has been accumulating over hours and hours of sitting at a desk all day, and give practical advice in those sessions. And that's been really, really helpful, so that people actually know what it is they're doing, rather than just showing up and thinking, yeah, it feels quite good. It's better than answering emails.
That's one way to look at it. And I really appreciate that point coming in where you talk about leading with example, where the CEO himself or herself comes in and starts taking those classes. So, yeah, it some way or the other reflects on that health is more important than the meetings you might have scheduled, or you can manage your health regime alongside with those meetings as well. Finally, Basanti, I would like to understand that for our listeners who are eager to start incorporating yoga into their lives, but are unsure where to begin, what practical steps and practices would you recommend for them to start experiencing the benefits of yoga out there?
Yeah, first I would say anything that you're starting, anything that isn't a habit yet, make sure you make your life very easy and don't do too much. Don't think you have to do a 1.5 hour yoga class and go travel for an hour to get there. Maybe just start by finding yourself someone online. I'm online, I'm, on YouTube. I also have a subscription service that I'm working on, but I have lots of free stuff on YouTube. I would search for things that are shorter, maybe maybe not even an hour, maybe half an hour, maybe 10 minutes, if that's what you think you can spare. If you're a morning person, if you have a lot of energy in the morning, so a classic cuff would be, that's the sort of morning time. If you know you are Ayurvedic body types, then practice in the morning. Start with a few Surya Namaskar, or if that's also quite advanced for people, start with maybe just gentle stretches, reaching the arms up, folding forwards, just getting your body going, moving in a way that is intuitive to you. Maybe your first experience of yoga can just be an awareness of your body, where for 5 minutes, without rolling out a mat or anything, you focus on stretching the body while listening to your breath. Because when do we ever do that? And while concentrating the mind and trying not to let the mind wander, but concentrating it on your breath. So that would be a really lovely way to start. And also yoga, because it is about a gateway into practicing. And if you then choose that Hatha Yoga path, the path of yoga that involves the body, then you may go to classes. You may find that you're getting so much out of it that you don't mind traveling for an hour, that you don't mind getting up an hour earlier in the morning, etc. But that will all come as and when. So make your life as easy as possible so that this tiny habit can become a bigger thing.
I totally align with that. And I guess that's something what the book Atomic Habits also talks about, to start small and most importantly, to show up. So that I guess is going to be one of the most important things. Thank you, Basanti, for such an insightful conversation and illuminating us with your expertise around the world of yoga, asanas, meditation, and much more, starting with the concept of authentic yoga out there. That's so important and helping us understand the difference between different forms of yoga out there. So, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. I could have talked for much longer. I probably talked too long, but thank you for having me.
No, it was all in alignment, and it was really invigorating for me as well as I'm sure for our listeners. And to our listeners, remember that the journey of yoga is not just about physical transformation, but also about nurturing and enhancing your mental well-being. Thank you for joining us on We Are Listening. And until next time, keep exploring the wonders of yoga and neuroscience. And remember, we are listening. You can try our anonymous mental health platform, which goes by the same name as our podcast. We are listening, and you can share anything that's worrying you anonymously on this platform. Thank you.